I planned a surprise return for my husband, expecting a warm reunion. Instead, I overheard him call our 3-year marriage a nightmare, admitting he only stayed for my family's money just weeks after our romantic vow renewal. I simply smiled, a silent storm brewing. Now, as I uncover his secrets, my own Oscar-worthy performance begins. Like, share, and let me know where you're watching from. You won't believe what happens next. Nashville hummed with as usual vibrant energy, the kind that usually seeped into my soul and made me feel alive. But this particular trip, a girls' getaway with my best friends Charlotte and Brooke, took an unexpected turn when both succumbed to a nasty flu. Their misery, unfortunately, cut my own fun short. Yet a spark of anticipation still ignited within me. Julian, my wonderful husband, he'd be thrilled to see me early, a delightful surprise to brighten his week. On the long drive home, my mind was a flurry of domestic delights. I pictured his face, the genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I stopped at our favorite Mexican joint for his ultimate comfort food, a huge order of loaded nachos, heavy on the jalapenos, just the way he loved them. Then, a quick detour to the craft beer store for that obscure microbrew he'd been raving about. My heart swelled with the simple joy of giving. Pulling into our driveway, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the immaculate lawn. I used my garage code, sliding the door up silently, eager to execute my grand surprise. Keys in hand, I crept into the house, my footsteps barely a whisper on the cool hardwood floors. I imagined a playful pounce, a whispered, "Guess who's home early," as I found him. As I neared the gaming room, a low murmur drifted from inside. Julian and Marcus, his best friend. Sounds like a heated session, I thought, a soft smile on my face, picturing them hunched over their consoles. I paused, ready to burst in, but then Julian's voice, colder and sharper than I'd ever heard it, cut through the air. His words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. "Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision." My world tilted. I pressed myself against the wall, hoping I'd misheard, prayed that my ears were playing cruel tricks. Then he continued, his tone chillingly casual. "If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already." My heart, a fragile thing moments ago, froze solid in my chest. I waited. I waited for the punchline, for Marcus's boisterous laugh, to confirm it was all a terrible, tasteless joke. But there was only a chilling silence, followed by Julian's almost bored sigh. He wasn't done. "Our vow renewal last month, Oscar-worthy performance, if I do say so myself." The words, laced with a venom I'd never heard from him, felt like a physical assault. She's just the money wife, after all. Every cherished memory, every loving glance, every gentle touch we'd shared, it all curdled into a grotesque, agonizing lie. Devastation isn't a strong enough word for what engulfed me. My past, present, and future shattered into a million painful shards. The man I loved, the man I trusted implicitly, was a stranger, a cold, calculating imposter. Every memory, every shared laugh, every late-night confession was tainted, coated in a thick, suffocating layer of deceit. I couldn't breathe. I backed away, each step a silent scream, my feet numb. I fumbled for the garage door, escaping the suffocating truth of our home, and locked myself in my car. 2 hours I sat there, paralyzed, tears streaming down my face. The forgotten nachos and craft beer on the passenger's seat mocking my foolish hope. Remnants of a love that was never real. The sight of the uneaten food was a fresh sting. I returned it to the grocery store, mumbling a pathetic lie to a sweet old lady about my dog dying, just to explain the unshed tears. Then, composing myself with a chilling resolve, I texted Charlotte and Brooke, claiming I decided to extend my trip, needing a few more days to myself. The lie felt bitter on my tongue, but it was necessary. The next few days were a blur of forced cheerfulness with my friends, my mind a maelstrom of fear and fury. I returned home exactly when I was supposed to, my heart a lead weight in my chest, a terrifying plan forming. Julian greeted me at the door with a kiss, oblivious. Or so I hoped. I returned it, a hollow echo of our past affections. My own Oscar-worthy performance had just begun. The irony was a cruel twist of the knife. 5 days. 5 agonizing days of sleeping next to someone who apparently woke up every morning regretting my very existence. The silence between us was no longer comfortable. It was a gaping chasm, filled with unspoken truths and chilling deception. And then, in the quiet solitude of my home office, a new, unsettling thread of the mystery began to unravel. Reviewing our joint accounts, I noticed them. Small, consistent, suspicious withdrawals. Not enough to raise immediate alarm, but enough to prickle my intuition, confirming that Julian's performance wasn't just about emotional manipulation. There was something more. The initial shock of Julian's betrayal had receded, replaced by a cold, searing resolve. The tears had dried, leaving behind a hard knot of determination. Confrontation was tempting, a cathartic explosion of pain and rage, but it would be foolish. Julian, I now understood, was a master manipulator, and I needed to be smarter, colder, more methodical than he could ever imagine. My mind, once consumed by grief, began to strategize. I mentally and later secretly on a burner notebook drew up a list. Secure my finances, gather irrefutable evidence, uncover the full depth of his deception, and finally prepare my exit. My first practical step was to fortify my personal bank account, the one I'd always maintained separately from my family inheritance and career earnings, untouched by Julian's gaze. I increased its security protocols, changed passwords, and set up alerts for any unusual activity. Then, with a practiced hand and a racing heart, I began the delicate dance of moving money. Nothing drastic, nothing that would flag immediate attention. Small, consistent transfers from our joint accounts into my personal one, like slowly siphoning water from a shared reservoir. Just enough to protect myself, to build a war chest for the inevitable battle ahead, without tipping my hand. Julian, ever the charmer, suggested a reconnection trip a few weeks later. To make up for our interrupted Nashville plans, he said, his smile still capable of twisting a knife in my gut. I feigned enthusiasm, then proposed our family's rustic cabin upstate. It was off-grid, minimal Wi-Fi, a place I loved for its quiet solitude. I watched his face carefully. A flicker of disappointment, quickly masked, but I saw it. The cabin wasn't just a peaceful retreat. It was isolated. No bars, no city lights, no easy escape. At the cabin, the disconnect between us was palpable, though I worked hard to appear normal. Julian, usually so present, was glued to his phone, constantly complaining about the spotty Wi-Fi, roaming the property like a desperate ghost, searching for a signal. I often found him on the small dock overlooking the lake, whispering into his device. One afternoon, his voice carried across the still water, a low, frustrated murmur. "I'll make it up to you, I promise," he said, laced with an almost desperate placation. "Just stuck in the middle of nowhere. Can't get out of it." Trapped, the word echoed in my mind, confirming my suspicions. I was not just a money wife, I was a cage. Upon our return, Julian announced he was running to Walmart for a few necessities. He was gone for over 2 hours. A tiny red flag, but nothing definitive. Later, casually reviewing our joint credit card statement online, I found it. A $60 charge from a local bar, timed perfectly with his Walmart excursion. He hadn't just bought groceries. Another piece of the puzzle slotted into place. I decided to run a test. Over dinner one evening, I mentioned with feigned concern that my father was considering early retirement due to some health concerns. Julian's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His eyes, usually so expressive, narrowed. Early retirement? But what about his investments? The trusts? Is everything secure? His questions came fast and furious, but they all revolved around one thing: money. He asked nothing about my father's health, no genuine inquiry about the man he supposedly respected. My gut clenched. He cared only about the tap flowing to him. My deeper dive into our joint finances became relentless. I worked in secret late into the night, cross-referencing statements, digging through old receipts. That's when I uncovered it, almost $17,000 in business expenses over the past 3 years. Not huge, single amounts, but a steady trickle, just under the radar. What business? Julian had no side business, no entrepreneurial ventures I knew of. And then a pattern emerged. Many of these larger withdrawals coincided precisely with his visits back to his hometown. A cold chill settled over me. One afternoon while Julian was at the gym, I acted. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached his nightstand. Tucked away beneath a stack of old magazines, I found it. A second cheap prepaid phone. It wasn't just a simple discovery, it was a revelation. On the back, a faded sticky note bore a simple 4-digit password. His lazy confidence infuriated me. With trembling fingers, I entered it. The screen lit up, a Pandora's box of secrets. Text with a contact named Danielle filled the recent messages. My breath hitched as I scrolled, the words blurring through a fresh wave of tears. Long-term plans. Almost there, and the most chilling of all, just 2 more years, baby. Then we'll be free. 2 more years until what? Until my family's money was fully secured by him? Until his escape plan was complete? I photographed everything, every damning text, every call log. My hands shook, but my resolve was solid. Carefully, meticulously, I replaced the phone exactly as I found it, a phantom of knowledge now living within me. From that moment on, a subtle shift in my behavior began. I'd casually drop phrases into conversation. My father was just talking to our family lawyer about some estate planning. Or, my cousin mentioned getting her prenup reviewed, just to be safe. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, just whispers, seeds of doubt, designed to fester in his calculating mind. I watched him, the slight hesitation in his voice, the way his eyes would dart away, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. Julian, the master of deceit, was beginning to show cracks. His own paranoia, once my burden, was slowly becoming his own. The subtle seeds of doubt I had planted were beginning to sprout, twisting into an ugly vine of paranoia around Julian. His once smooth facade was now riddled with nervous tics. I'd catch him, out of the corner of my eye, lingering near my closet, as if expecting to find secrets hidden amongst my clothes. My iPad, usually a safe space, was now a target for his furtive digital explorations. I'd find it slightly off-center on the coffee table, a clear sign he'd been scrolling through my search history, looking for answers I wasn't giving him. To fan the flames of his suspicion, I began leaving deliberate breadcrumbs. One afternoon, I forgot to close the browser tabs on my laptop before stepping away. The screens glowed with searches like signs your husband is cheating, how to tell if your partner is lying, and unexplained financial withdrawals in marriage. It was a cruel game, but he had initiated it. I wanted him to feel the same gnawing dread he had so casually inflicted upon me. His fear manifested in frantic attempts to appear the perfect, caring husband. Our old house, which had seen years of his benign neglect, suddenly became his project. The squeaky bedroom door, a constant complaint of mine for months, was oiled into silence. The wobbly kitchen table, which had stubbornly resisted my own repair attempts, was now perfectly stable. It was like watching someone frantically trying to prove their value, to mend the superficial cracks while the foundation was crumbling. Each fixed item was not an act of love, but a desperate scramble for reassurance, a pathetic plea for me to believe his act. I knew I couldn't bear this burden alone. My best friend Olivia was the only person I trusted implicitly, the only one who truly understood the depth of my quiet terror. Over hushed phone calls, a secret language developing between us, I poured out everything. The gaming room confession, Danielle, the prepaid phone, the stolen money. Olivia, fiercely loyal and sharp-witted, became my anchor, my co-conspirator. She helped me set up a separate, encrypted email account, a secure digital vault for all the damning evidence I was meticulously gathering. Every screenshot, every financial statement, every suspicious detail went into that email, safe from Julian's prying eyes. One evening, I had arranged to meet Olivia for what I told Julian was a late client meeting. I was actually at Starbucks reviewing more documents when Julian appeared, a takeout bag from my favorite Italian restaurant in hand. His smile was forced, almost brittle. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the food down. The gesture was meant to be sweet, but it felt invasive, calculated. As we sat there, him pretending to care about my work, his true agenda emerged. I heard you on the phone with Olivia earlier, he started, his voice deceptively casual. You mentioned big changes. Everything okay? My heart rate spiked, but I kept my expression neutral. He was fishing. He must have been listening from a distance, catching snippets. I realized then that the 27 frantic calls he had made to me a few days prior, when I was allegedly still on my extended trip, weren't just concern. That morning, I had accidentally left printouts of some of his larger, unexplained withdrawals on my desk. He must have found them, panicked, and launched into his phone assault. I met his gaze calmly. Everything's fine, Julian, I said, a practiced ease in my voice. Just work stuff, you know. Olivia and I were brainstorming about a new marketing strategy for my firm. Big changes in campaign approach. I watched his relief wash over him, then instantly morph into another kind of anxiety. And your dad? Is he doing okay with everything? The question hung in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. His concern wasn't for my father's health, but for the perceived stability of his business plans, the wellspring of my family's wealth. He was terrified the tap was running dry. I maintained my composure, taking a sip of my coffee. Dad's fine, just busy with work, same as always. I offered a small, reassuring smile, a balm to his visible worry. He chewed on his lower lip, then brightened, or at least tried to. You know, with all the stress, maybe we should plan something for us. Another vow renewal for our parents? They loved the last one. The suggestion felt desperate, transparent. It wasn't about us. It was about cementing his position, making a public display of our commitment, especially to my parents, ensuring his gravy train stayed on track. He was panicking about losing his illusion of security. Maybe next year, love, I said softly, touching his hand. Things are a bit hectic right now with work, but it's a sweet idea. The relief that flooded his features was palpable, almost pathetic. My casual dismissal, far from being a rejection, had bought him time, and in his mind it had reaffirmed my unsuspecting devotion. But beneath my calm exterior, a storm was brewing. The next day, under the guise of an errand, I found myself in a discreet office downtown. I was consulting a divorce lawyer. The meeting was cold, factual, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil I was enduring. I laid out everything: the bank statements, the screenshots from the prepaid phone, the evidence of his business expenses, the pattern of his hometown visits. I also started a quiet inventory of my personal heirlooms, discreetly moving irreplaceable items to a safe deposit box, ensuring that when the hammer finally fell, nothing truly precious would be caught in the wreckage. Undefined. Julian's paranoia was escalating, a visible tremor beneath his carefully constructed composure. One evening, he burst into tears, claiming he was losing me, that he sensed a distance between us. His voice broke, his eyes welled up with what looked like genuine despair. It almost worked. Almost. But then, as I cautiously suggested we might need to postpone our upcoming luxury trip to the Amalfi Coast, a gift from my parents, his tears dried remarkably fast. The emotional crisis, seemingly so profound, evaporated like mist in the sun, replaced by a flicker of annoyance, a calculated pout. It wasn't me he was afraid of losing. It was the lifestyle, the access, the endless stream of generosity from my family. That same week, I had my crucial second meeting with a divorce lawyer. It was illuminating, terrifying, and empowering all at once. We discussed the prenup I had signed, a document meant to protect me, but which Julian's deception could potentially undermine or even invalidate parts of entirely, given his calculated fraud. My legal team was already building a case, meticulously linking his financial misdeeds to a pattern of premeditated malice. While I was out, strategizing my future, Julian was having a meltdown at home. He called me incessantly, voice tinged with frantic accusation, demanding to know where I was, what I was doing. When I finally returned, I pieced it together. He had found my laptop, open to flight searches for my cousin's place in another state. Not enough to definitively prove anything, but certainly enough to send his already frayed nerves into a spiral of panic. He was losing control, and the desperation was making him sloppy. That night, Julian decided to stage an elaborate dinner. The table was set with our best china, candles flickering, a meal he had clearly spent hours preparing. But his hands, usually so steady, trembled as he poured wine. His smile was stretched too wide, his eyes darting, betraying the raw fear gnawing at him. He was desperate, and I could feel the weight of his anxiety pressing down on me. Then came his speech. He cleared his throat, took a deep breath, and launched into a bizarre monologue about his profound happiness, his gratitude for our life together, how I was the best thing that ever happened to him. He sounded like an actor who hadn't quite learned all his lines, stumbling over platitudes that felt utterly hollow. My stomach churned. I knew what was coming. "Eleanor," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. We've been married 3 years, and it's been the most incredible time. I think it's time we really started planning our future properly." He reached across the table, taking my hand, his grip clammy. "I think it's time we started trying for a baby. Right now." The words hit me like a physical blow. I nearly choked on the wine I was pretending to sip. A baby? Now? After 3 years of every excuse under the sun, not the right time, too busy. Let's enjoy ourselves first. Career focus? This sudden change of heart wasn't about love or a desire for a family. It was about locking me down, securing his future, a desperate maneuver to tie me to him with an unbreakable bond. Julian, misinterpreting my stunned silence, launched into another Oscar-worthy performance, tears welling up in his eyes once more. I know," he choked out. "I've been so focused on things, but seeing you, being with you, I just realized what truly matters. Family, us, our future." I gently extricated my hand from his, my voice calm, almost detached. "That's quite a coincidence, Julian," I said, a chilling smile playing on my lips, "because I've been doing some thinking about our future too." The hope that had momentarily bloomed on his face withered into pure panic. His eyes widened, searching mine for clues, for an answer he clearly dreaded. "Oh," he managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," I continued, leaning forward slightly, my gaze unblinking. "I've been thinking a lot about what future really means, about honesty in marriage, about what people really want from their partners. Remember our vow renewal, Julian? Just last month?" His breath hitched. He nodded slowly. "You stood there?" I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "And you promised to cherish me, to be true to me, to love me unconditionally. You said you'd always be my rock, my partner in everything." I paused, letting the weight of his own words hang in the air. "Funny, isn't it? Because just a few weeks before that, you were telling Marcus that our marriage was a complete nightmare. Pure torture, you said. That you wake up every day regretting your decision." Julian gasped, a choked sound, his face drained of all color. "You said you were only with me for my family's money," I pressed on, my voice steady, merciless. "And that you had to make up all this romantic for the money wife, as you so charmingly called me." He flinched, as if physically struck. His hand, still trembling, knocked over his wine glass. Red liquid spread across the pristine white tablecloth like a stain of blood. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His eyes, wind with pure horror, stared at me as if I were a ghost. "It was just venting," he finally stammered, scrambling for an excuse. "About a rough patch, you know? Guys talk. It didn't mean anything, Eleanor. You have to believe me." "Really?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "Venting about a rough patch involves calling your wife the money wife." If you've been gripped by Eleanor's story so far, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion that's about to unfold. After the wine incident and my chilling revelation at dinner, Julian launched into a full-scale campaign of what I can only describe as exhausting emotional manipulation. For 2 solid weeks, a relentless barrage. Flowers arrived daily, often with tear-soaked notes professing his undying love and regret. He contacted my parents, feigning concern for my emotional state, hinting at stress at work that was making me distant. He even suggested couples therapy, pitching it as a way for us to reconnect and work through my issues. It was a theatrical masterpiece designed to make me feel guilty, to doubt myself, to pull me back into his web. But the glaring omission was his tell. Not once, in all his declarations and pleas, did he ever directly address the money wife comment or the financial implications of my family's wealth. He danced around it, always focusing on our emotional bond, never the fiscal chain he thought bound him to me. While he played his pathetic games, I continued my methodical dismantling of our shared life. I systematically transferred the remaining significant funds from our joint accounts into my highly secure personal one. I scheduled a discreet meeting with my family's trusted financial advisor, Mr. Harrison, laying out the raw truth of Julian's financial misdeeds and our increasingly complex marital situation. Simultaneously, I started packing. Not just clothes, but every irreplaceable item, every heirloom, every personal document, boxes filled with memories, with family photographs, with the quiet dignity of my own past. They were all transported to a secret storage unit, a physical fortress against the emotional and financial wreckage that was about to unfold. Then came the hardest part, telling my parents. They adored Julian. He was everything they had ever wanted from me, charming, attentive, outwardly successful. Sitting them down in their living room, watching the joy drain from their faces as I recounted Julian's confession, the prepaid phone, Danielle, the stolen money, was agonizing. My father, usually so stoic, turned ashen. His initial reaction was pure, protective fury. He wanted to confront Julian immediately, unleash a righteous anger I had rarely seen. But I appealed to him, to their shared intelligence, explaining my strategic plan, the need for evidence, for legal precision over emotional outburst. He reluctantly agreed, his heartbreak visible in the deep lines etched around his eyes. My mother, however, shifted instantly into full mama bear mode. Her initial shock gave way to a quiet, simmering rage, her disappointment in Julian profound and absolute. Their unwavering support, though born from pain, was a powerful shield, a rock beneath my feet. Julian, still trying to project an image of normalcy, continued his charade. One afternoon, the dishwasher finally gave up the ghost. "Don't worry about it, honey," he said, too quickly, too brightly. "I'll just get a new one. No problem." He pulled out his phone, already searching for models, readily agreeing to an expensive, high-end appliance without a single question about the price. It was a clear demonstration that he wanted me to believe money was no object to him, that he wasn't worried about our finances. A transparent lie, given his previous behaviors. A few nights later, at a dinner party hosted by Charlotte and her boyfriend Benjamin, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Benjamin, a lawyer himself, began recounting a fascinating case he'd worked on, a sophisticated scam involving marital fraud and hidden assets. He spoke casually, recounting the details with a professional detachment, but the air around Julian grew thick with tension. I watched him, saw his posture stiffen, his hand repeatedly brush against his ear as if trying to clear away Benjamin's words. He barely touched his food, feigning a sudden illness to escape the conversation. The discomfort radiating from him was palpable, a delicious confirmation that his conscience, despite his best efforts, was not entirely silent. On the drive home, the silence in the car was heavy. Julian broke it, his voice tentative. "Eleanor's home," he said. "Is everything really okay between us? I feel like you've been so distant lately." I turned my head slowly, met his gaze in the dim light of the dashboard. "Julian," I said, my voice calm, unwavering, "if you're feeling that something's wrong, perhaps you should check your own conscience." His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. He turned away, staring out the window, unable to meet my eyes. A few days later, I found him in our study, flipping through our wedding album. When he saw me, he jumped, startled, the album almost slipping from his hands. "Just feeling a bit nostalgic," he mumbled, a forced smile on his face. But his eyes were frantic, darting around the room around me. He wasn't looking for nostalgia. He was searching for clues, for any sign of what I knew, what I might be planning. The pieces were almost all in place. I scheduled a meeting at my parents' estate office, ostensibly a routine trust matter, that required their presence. Julian was not invited, of course. The true purpose of that meeting with my parents and Mr. Harrison was to formally remove Julian as a beneficiary from all family trusts and to discuss the final divorce implications. I looked at him across the breakfast table the next morning, pouring coffee, his back to me. The facade was still there, but it was cracking under the weight of his own fear. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of pretending I don't know our entire marriage has been a business transaction. The air in my father's opulent office was thick with unspoken tension, a stark contrast to the elegant leather and polished mahogany surrounding us. Julian, oblivious to the storm about to break, strode in, radiating false charm. He greeted my parents with his usual affectionate embrace, his smile wide and confident, then gave me a quick, almost patronizing squeeze of the hand. He clearly thought this was his moment to cement his position, to further entrench himself in my family's financial world. Mr. Harrison, my family's financial advisor, sat quietly, his expression unreadable. My father, usually so warm, motioned for Julian to sit. There was no preamble, no pleasantries. He simply pushed a thick manila folder across the polished desk. Julian, my father began, his voice surprisingly calm. We need to discuss some irregularities. Julian's smile faltered. He opened the folder, and his face cycled through a terrifying kaleidoscope of emotions. Initial confusion, then dawning shock, escalating panic, and finally, a flicker of desperate calculation. Inside lay the irrefutable proof, bank statements highlighting his suspicious withdrawals, screenshots of his damning texts with Danielle, and a transcript, followed by an audio recording of his phone call with Marcus, where he'd so casually dubbed the money wife. His meticulously constructed world was crumbling before his eyes. He tried pathetically to regain control. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered, his voice cracking. Just a rough patch, venting to a friend. You know how guys talk. But my mother, her mama bear fury unleashed, wasn't having it. Venting? She practically roared, her elegant composure shattering. You gold-digging parasite! You planned this all along, didn't you? Preying on my daughter's heart, using her family for your pathetic schemes. Julian recoiled, shrinking under her unexpected wrath. Then Mr. Harrison, in his measured, professional tone, delivered the final crushing blows. He explained, in intricate legal detail, how Julian had been formally removed as a beneficiary from all family trusts, all business interests, effective immediately. His access, his perceived future, vanished in a single precise sentence. My father, his voice now cold as ice, looked directly at Julian. Divorce papers will be served within the hour. You have 24 hours to vacate our daughter's home. Any attempt to contact her or anyone in this family will be met with immediate legal action. Julian turned to me, his eyes brimming with performative tears, his face a mask of feigned heartbreak. Eleanor, he choked out, how can you do this? Are you really going to throw away 3 years of marriage over a misunderstanding? I met his gaze, my own eyes dry, my heart finally clear. You already did that, Julian, I said, my voice steady, when you decided I was nothing but a meal ticket. The confrontation was over. Julian left that office a shell of his former self, his grand illusions shattered. The divorce process, thanks to the overwhelming evidence of his fraudulent intent and the meticulous work of my legal team, was surprisingly quick and clean. Julian's outrageous demands for a substantial share of assets were laughed out of court, dismissed by the damning evidence, including his own recorded words, that proved his marriage was a calculated financial transaction, not a bond of love. He was left with little more than the clothes on his back and the humiliation of his public unmasking. In the aftermath, I sought solace in new beginnings. I moved out of the house we had shared into a beautiful, smaller apartment that was entirely my own. Here, I began to rediscover myself. The quiet hum of my new space, the freedom to decorate it exactly as I pleased, the simple joy of my too loud laugh echoing through the rooms, it was all part of my healing. My relationship with my parents, forged through the crucible of betrayal, deepened into an unbreakable bond. My father, with a genuine humility that touched my soul, apologized for not having prepared me better for such a world. Olivia and Charlotte, true friends, remained my steadfast anchors, celebrating every small victory, offering comfort on the bad days. Brooke, however, chose to side with Julian, believing his fabricated victimhood. It hurt, but it also clarified who truly belonged in my life. And then, a final chilling piece of the puzzle fell into place. Through some lingering digital breadcrumbs and the relentless work of my legal team, I discovered that Danielle wasn't just a fleeting affair. She was Julian's ex-girlfriend, and he had been in contact with her throughout our entire 3-year marriage, showering her with money, some of it undoubtedly mine, and promises of a future together, all while playing the devoted husband to me. It was a cold, calculated double life. With a final surge of empowerment, I sent Danielle a short, anonymous message. Good luck. You'll need it. There are still bad days, of course, moments of doubt, echoes of pain, but they are fewer now, and I face them with a strength I never knew I possessed. The relief of being truly free, of shedding the heavy cloak of deceit, is immense. The money wife is dead. Long live just plain Eleanor. It started in a whisper, a casual confession that shattered my world. Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. That was Julian on the phone just after our 3rd anniversary. My hands were literally shaking then, crying silently in the bathroom, the shower running to mask my sobs, wondering where to even begin. But those tears dried, the silent shock giving way to a steel resolve. I returned to our home playing the unsuspecting wife, while secretly dismantling his carefully constructed lies. From uncovering hidden accounts and a second phone to revealing his mistress and his contempt for me, every step was calculated. I became a strategist, securing my future piece by piece, even as he desperately tried to reel me back in with emotional ploys and even a baby bomb proposal. He called me 27 times in an hour once because he knew deep down what I was doing. The final confrontation was swift, brutal, and utterly liberating. Julian's desperate pleas and crocodile tears were meaningless against the mountain of evidence my parents, our financial advisor, and I presented. He was left with nothing but the humiliating truth. The divorce was quick, dismissing his absurd claims with undeniable evidence of his deceit. Now the phantom wife he created is gone. I've found my own strength, my own voice, even my too loud laugh again. The journey was agonizing, but the freedom is profound. I am no longer the money wife, but simply Eleanor, whole and unbound, finally free from the nightmare he made our marriage. The future, for the first time in years, truly feels like my own.